You think you know how power works? You think it's the loudest voice in the room or the most expensive suit? You're wrong. Real power is silence. It's the ability to stop a 400-ton Boeing 777 with a single word. When the crew of Flight 409 dragged a quiet woman out of first class to make room for a golden boy heir, they didn't realize they weren't just removing a passenger. They were evicting the boss. Watch what happens when the pilot finds out who she really is, locks the cockpit, and teaches an entire airport a brutal lesson in karma. This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. The air inside the cabin of the Boeing 777-300ER smelled of recycled ozone and the faint, expensive leather of the first-class pods. It was a smell Jordan Maxwell knew well. It was the scent of her second home. Jordan adjusted the cuffs of her cashmere hoodie, pulling the fabric down over her wrists. She wasn't dressed like the other passengers trickling into the exclusive cabin. There were no Gucci logos plastered across her chest, no Louis Vuitton monogram duffel bag swinging from her shoulder. She wore a simple charcoal set that probably looked like gym wear to the untrained eye, but was actually Loro Piana, costing more than the Honda Civic parked in the employee lot outside. She sank into seat 1A, the prime spot. The throne, as frequent flyers called it. It offered the most privacy, a direct view of the cockpit door, and the assurance that for the next 11 hours from London, Heathrow to Los Angeles, she could simply exist without demands. She closed her eyes, exhausted. The last 72 hours had been a blur of boardrooms in Berlin, high-stakes negotiations in Zurich, and a final brutal signing dinner in London. As the CEO of Apex Systems, a global leader in cybersecurity and cloud infrastructure, Jordan carried the weight of a $40 billion valuation on her shoulders. But right now, all she wanted was a glass of sparkling water and silence. "Ma'am?" Jordan opened one eye. A flight attendant stood over her. Her name tag read Brenda. She was smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a tight, practiced grimace, the kind reserved for passengers who didn't quite fit the profile. "Welcome aboard," Brenda said, her tone dripping with a sugary condescension. "Can I check your boarding pass, please? Just to be sure you're in the correct seat. Economy boarding is actually through the second door, past the galley." Jordan didn't flinch. She was used to this. Being a black woman in her late 30s with effortless skin and casual hair often confused people who associated wealth with age and whiteness. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and illuminated the screen. "I know where economy is, Brenda," Jordan said, her voice low and smooth, like polished oak. "But my seat is 1A. She held up the digital boarding pass. J. Maxwell. Seat 1A, Group 1. Brenda squinted at the screen, her brow furrowing, as if trying to find a glitch in the matrix. She lingered for a second too long, seemingly disappointed that the ticket was valid. "Right," Brenda said, straightening up but not apologizing. "Well, let me get your coat. Although, we usually prefer smaller personal items to be stowed overhead in this cabin." "I'll keep it with me," Jordan said, turning her head toward the window, effectively dismissing the woman. Brenda huffed, a sharp intake of air, and walked away, her heels clicking aggressively against the floor. Jordan exhaled. She put her noise-cancelling headphones on, not playing music, just activating the silence mode to dampen the noise of the shuffling passengers. For 10 minutes, it was peaceful. She watched the rain streak against the glass of the Heathrow tarmac. The grey London sky was soothing. She began to drift off, her body heavy with fatigue. Then, the peace shattered. "Excuse me? No. This is absolutely ridiculous. Check it again." The voice was loud, booming, and American. It cut through Jordan's noise-cancelling tech like a knife. She sighed, sliding the headphones down to her neck. Standing at the entrance of the first-class cabin was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory for entitlement. He was tall, wearing a navy suit that was a little too shiny, a gold watch the size of a hockey puck, and holding a Toomey briefcase. His face was flushed red, his blonde hair perfectly coiffed, but currently vibrating with rage. He was shouting at Brenda. "I am a Platinum Key member," the man spat. "I specifically requested seat 1A. My assistant confirmed it this morning. Do you know who I am? I'm Preston Holloway, the Preston Holloway." Jordan raised an eyebrow. The name sounded vaguely familiar, likely some real estate scion or a hedge fund manager who made the news for the wrong reasons. Brenda looked flustered, holding a tablet. "Mr. Holloway, I understand, but the system shows you in 2A. It's right behind 1A. It's the same seat configuration." "I don't care about the configuration," Preston barked, stepping fully into the cabin and blocking the aisle for everyone behind him. "I care about the principle. I always sit in 1A. It's my seat. I have meetings to prepare for, and I need the privacy of the bulkhead." He scanned the cabin, his eyes landing on Jordan. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, and then to something much uglier. A smirk curled on his lips. He looked her up and down, taking in the hoodie, the lack of visible jewelry, the relaxed posture. "Wait a minute." Preston laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "That's who is in my seat. You've got to be kidding me. You bumped me for her?" Jordan didn't move. She simply rotated her head slowly to look him in the eye. She didn't blink. Brenda looked between the screaming man in the expensive suit and the quiet woman in the hoodie. Jordan saw the calculation happening in Brenda's mind. On one side, a loud, wealthy-looking white man who was likely a frequent flyer. On the other, a young black woman who, in Brenda's eyes, was probably an upgrade mistake or a non-revenue employee flying on a pass. Brenda made her choice. She stepped toward Jordan. "Mom," Brenda said, her voice losing all the sugary sweetness from before. "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass again." The cabin went quiet. The other passengers in first class, a mix of older business executives and a famous British actress in sunglasses, stopped settling in and watched. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Jordan didn't reach for her phone this time. "I already showed it to you, Brenda. 1A. The seat is mine." "There seems to be a conflict in the system," Brenda lied. Her voice was louder now, performing for Preston Holloway. "Mr. Holloway is a priority passenger. There may have been a double booking. I need to verify your ticket class." "There is no double booking," Jordan said calmly. "I bought this ticket 3 weeks ago. Full fare. If Mr. Holloway wants 1A, he should have booked it earlier." Preston Holloway scoffed, stepping closer. He loomed over Jordan's pod, invading her personal space. "Look, sweetheart," he sneered. "Let's not make this difficult. We both know you probably used miles or got some lucky upgrade at the gate. But I actually pay for my lifestyle. Why don't you be a good girl, grab your little backpack, and head back to row 30, where there's plenty of space for your type?" Jordan's pulse didn't quicken. In fact, it slowed down. This was the cold calm she used when she was tearing a competitor apart during a hostile takeover. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'6", but she had a presence that made her seem 7 feet tall. She looked Preston dead in the eye. "Mr. Holloway," Jordan said, her voice crisp and authoritative. "I don't know who you think you are, but you are currently harassing a fellow passenger. I suggest you sit in your assigned seat, 2A, before you embarrass yourself further." Preston's face turned a darker shade of crimson. He turned to Brenda. Are you going to let her talk to me like that? I want her off this plane. She's aggressive. I feel threatened. It was the oldest trick in the book, the weaponization of fear. Brenda nodded sharply. Ma'am, you're causing a disturbance. I'm going to ask you to move to economy. We have a seat available in 42B. I can offer you a voucher for the difference in fare. I am not moving, Jordan said. And I am not causing a disturbance. He is. If you don't move voluntarily, I will have to call the gate agents and security, Brenda threatened, crossing her arms. Call them, Jordan challenged. Call the captain while you're at it. I don't need to bother Captain Anderson with this, Brenda snapped. This is a cabin issue. Last chance. Move to economy or get off the plane. Jordan sat back down. She crossed her legs and looked out the window. I'm not moving. Preston Holloway laughed, clapping his hands together. Unbelievable. The audacity. Get the police. Brenda grabbed the interphone and spoke in hushed, angry tones. Minutes passed. The air conditioning hissed. Passengers whispered. A man in 3A took out his phone and started recording, aiming the lens discreetly between the seats. 5 minutes later, 2 burly men in yellow reflective vests boarded the plane, followed by a frantic-looking gate agent named Gary. Where is the problem? Gary asked, looking around. Right here. Brenda pointed a manicured finger at Jordan. She's refusing crew instructions. She's in Mr. Holloway's seat and refusing to move to her reassigned seat. She's being belligerent. Gary looked at Jordan. He looked tired. He didn't check the manifest. He just wanted the plane to leave on time so he wouldn't get docked for a delay. Ma'am, Gary said, stepping into the pod. You need to grab your bags and come with us. I have a valid ticket, Jordan said, holding up her phone again. Scan it. Gary pushed the phone away. The crew has deemed you a flight risk due to non-compliance. It doesn't matter what ticket you have anymore. Once the crew wants you off, you have to get off. That's federal law. Let's go. Don't make us drag you. Jordan looked at Gary. She looked at Brenda, who was smirking triumphantly. She looked at Preston Holloway, who was already settling his briefcase into the overhead bin of seat 1A, waiting for her to vacate. She realized there was no winning this right here, right now. Physical resistance would only get her arrested and give them the footage they wanted. The angry black woman getting hauled off by police. That would ruin her reputation before the truth ever came out. She had to play the long game. Fine, Jordan said softly. She stood up. She grabbed her Loro Piana hoodie and her phone. Smart move, Preston chuckled. Bye-bye. Jordan paused in the aisle. She looked at Brenda. You have made a mistake, Brenda. A very expensive mistake. Get off my plane, Brenda hissed. Jordan walked down the aisle, the walk of shame. Hundreds of eyes from economy watched as she was escorted out by security like a criminal. She heard the whispers. What did she do? Must be drunk. Probably stole that seat. She walked out onto the jet bridge, the cool, damp air of London hitting her face. Gary, the gate agent, stopped her at the podium. I need to process your removal, Gary said, typing on the computer. You're banned from this flight. We'll rebook you on a partner airline tomorrow, maybe. Jordan didn't answer. She was typing on her phone. She wasn't texting a friend. She was sending a direct message to David Sterling, the chairman of the board for the Airline Alliance, and a personal friend she played tennis with in the Hamptons. But before she could hit send, the jet bridge door opened again. Captain James Sully Anderson had stepped out of the cockpit to check the cargo load sheet. He was an old-school pilot, grey hair, stripes on his shoulder, a man who respected the rules of the sky. He saw Jordan standing there with security. He paused. He squinted. He didn't recognize her face immediately, but he recognized the situation. He walked over to Gary. What's the hold-up, Gary? We're burning fuel. Just removing a disruptive passenger, Captain, Gary said. Refused to give up her seat for a platinum member. We're closing the doors now. Disruptive? Captain Anderson looked at Jordan. She stood perfectly still, her hands clasped, her face a mask of terrifying calm. She didn't look drunk. She didn't look loud. She looked important. I wasn't disruptive, Captain, Jordan said, her voice steady. I was in my assigned seat, 1A. Brenda tried to force me into economy because Mr. Holloway wanted my spot. When I refused, she called security. Captain Anderson frowned. Holloway. Preston Holloway is on board? Yes, Jordan said, and he's currently drinking the champagne meant for me. Anderson looked at Gary. Let me see the manifest. The real manifest, not the upgrade list. Gary nervously handed over the printed sheet. Captain Anderson scanned the names. His finger traced down the list of first-class passengers. 1A, Maxwell Jordan. Status, VIP, do not move. Notes, CEO, Apex Systems. Corporate account, 884, Bravo Zulu. Captain Anderson froze. He knew Apex Systems. Apex Systems provided the navigation software for the airline's entire fleet. If Apex pulled their license, every plane in the company would be grounded within an hour for safety compliance failures. He looked up at Jordan. The realization hit him like a lightning strike. They hadn't just kicked off a passenger, they had kicked off the woman who owned the digital keys to the plane. You're Jordan Maxwell, Anderson said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I am, she replied. The Jordan Maxwell who signed the contract renewal with our CEO last month? That's me, she said, though I'm reconsidering the partnership clause at this exact moment. Captain Anderson turned to Gary. His face went pale, then red with anger. Open the door, Anderson commanded. Captain, we're ready to push back, Gary stammered. I said open the damn door, Anderson roared, his voice echoing down the jet bridge. And tell ground control to put the blocks back on the wheels. Nobody's going anywhere. The heavy door of the Boeing 787 didn't just open. It was thrown back with a mechanical groan that echoed through the silent first-class cabin. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with a false sense of victory. Preston Holloway was currently swirling a glass of Dom Perignon, his feet propped up on the ottoman of Seat 1A. He was mid-sentence, loudly recounting a story to the passenger across the aisle, a nervous-looking tech investor named Simon, about how assertiveness is the only currency the world respects. Brenda was in the galley, aggressively organizing the silverware, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She felt powerful. She had protected a high-value flyer. She had maintained order. In her mind, she was already writing the incident report that would paint the woman in the hoodie as an unstable, non-compliant threat. Then, Captain Anderson stormed back onto the plane. He didn't look like the friendly Sully who waved to kids. His hat was pulled low. His jaw was set like concrete. He didn't walk. He marched. The flight attendants in the entryway, sensing the shift in air pressure, pressed themselves against the fuselage walls to let him pass. He walked straight past the galley. He walked straight past the flight deck door. He walked directly into the first-class cabin and stopped at seat 1A. Preston Holloway looked up, a smirk playing on his lips. He raised his glass. Captain, glad to see we're finally buttoned up. Apologies for the delay, but your staff handled the riff-raff efficiently. We should make up the time in the air, right? Anderson stared at him. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He looked at the champagne glass in Preston's hand, the champagne that was poured before takeoff, a direct violation of protocol for a non-seated passenger during a security event. Mr. Holloway, Anderson said. His voice wasn't loud, but it projected to the back of business class. It was the voice of a man who had landed planes in typhoons. Get your things. Preston's smile faltered. He chuckled nervously. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get your things. Grab your briefcase. Grab your coat. And get out of that seat." Brenda came rushing out of the galley, wiping her hands on a napkin. "Captain, what's going on? Mr. Halloway is our platinum guest. The situation with the disruptive passenger has been resolved." Anderson turned on his heel to face Brenda. The look he gave her was withering. It was a look of pure professional disappointment. "Resolved," Anderson repeated, the word dripping with ice. "You threw the CEO of our primary technical partner off my aircraft, Brenda. You forcibly removed the woman who owns the software that navigates this plane. You committed a gross violation of the VIP manifest protocols, and you humiliated a passenger who literally pays for the fuel in these tanks." The cabin went deathly silent. You could hear the fizz of the champagne bubbles in Preston's glass. Brenda's face drained of colour. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She didn't look like a CEO. She was wearing a hoodie. She was in Mr. Halloway's seat." "She was in her seat," Anderson barked, losing his temper for a fraction of a second before reeling it back in. "Seat 1A was booked by Jordan Maxwell. I checked the logs. Mr. Halloway was in 2A. You moved a confirmed, full-fare VIP to accommodate a man with an ego problem." Preston slammed his glass down, sloshing champagne onto the expensive leather console. "Now wait a minute. I don't care who she is. I am Preston Halloway. Do you know how much business I bring to this airline?" Anderson leaned down, putting his face inches from Preston's. "Mr. Halloway, right now, I don't care if you're the King of England. You are sitting in a seat that doesn't belong to you, on a plane that I command. You have two choices. Choice A, you get up, walk off this plane, and we sort this out at the gate. Choice B, I declare a Level 3 security threat. That's interference with a flight crew, and I have the federal marshals come in here and drag you out in handcuffs. And trust me, they won't be as polite as Brenda was." Preston looked around. The British actress in 3K was no longer hiding behind her sunglasses. She was watching with glee. The man recording on his phone was zooming in. Preston's face turned a violent shade of purple. "This is insane," Preston hissed. "I will sue this airline into the ground. I will have your badge. Get off my plane." Anderson pointed to the door. Preston grabbed his briefcase, shoving past the captain. "Fine. I didn't want to fly on this garbage carrier anyway." He stomped toward the exit, muttering obscenities. Brenda stood trembling in the aisle. "Captain, I didn't know. I swear, I was just trying to—" "Save it," Anderson said, holding up a hand. "You're relieved of duty, Brenda." "What?" Brenda gasped. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Captain, we can't fly with a crew member down. We'll fall below the FAA minimums. The flight will be cancelled." "The flight is already grounded," Anderson said grimly. "Because until Jordan Maxwell decides to let us leave, we aren't going anywhere. Grab your bag, Brenda. You're off the flight. Go wait on the jet bridge with the passenger you just assaulted." "I didn't assault her." "You used security to enforce an illegal removal based on bias. In my book, that's assault. Get off." As Brenda, sobbing and humiliated, grabbed her tote bag and followed Preston off the plane, Captain Anderson picked up the flight interphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. I apologize for the commotion in the forward cabin. We have a significant situation regarding a security error made by ground staff. We are currently grounded while we attempt to rectify a grave mistake. I ask for your patience. We are not leaving London until I have personally apologized to the passenger we wrongly ejected." He hung up the phone and looked out the window. He could see Jordan Maxwell standing on the jet bridge. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She was holding her phone to her ear, looking out at the rainy tarmac. Anderson felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that look. That wasn't the look of a victim. That was the look of a general planning an air strike. On the cold, steel-ribbed jet bridge, the air was awkward and heavy. Jordan Maxwell stood near the aircraft door, leaning against the railing. 10 feet away, Gary the gate agent was furiously typing on his terminal, trying to figure out why the system wouldn't let him close the flight manifest. Preston Halloway was pacing back and forth, shouting into his cell phone. "I want a private jet, Dad. Now. They kicked me off. Me? No, I don't know why. Some diversity hire pilot went on a power trip." Brenda was sitting on her flight attendant luggage, weeping into a tissue, occasionally looking up at Jordan with a mix of fear and hatred. Jordan ignored them all. She was on a call with David Sterling, the chairman of the Airline Alliance. "I'm sorry, Jordan." David's voice crackled through her earpiece. He sounded horrified. "I'm in New York right now. I just saw the alert." "They did what?" "They hauled me off like a criminal, David," Jordan said, her voice eerily calm. "Your staff humiliated me. They prioritized a man with a gold card over a black woman with a $40 billion company, despite me having the correct ticket. It was racial profiling, plain and simple." I know, David stammered. "I'll fire them, all of them. Just please get back on the plane. I'll upgrade the whole crew if I have to. I'll give you a free year of travel. Just don't let this go public." Jordan watched Preston Halloway kick a trash can. She looked at Brenda, who was now glaring at her. "It's too late for free miles, David," Jordan said. "This isn't about customer service anymore. This is about infrastructure." "What do you mean?" David asked, his voice dropping. "You know my company, Apex Systems, runs the back end for the Heathrow Terminal 5 gate scheduling logic, right? We just pushed a patch update last night." "Jordan," David sounded panicked. "Jordan, don't do this." "If I'm not welcome on your planes," Jordan said, "then neither is my code." She pulled the phone away from her ear, opened the Apex admin app, authenticated with her biometric thumbprint, and tapped a button labeled Rollback, Emergency Protocol. "Jordan!" David screamed through the phone. "Have a nice day, David." She hung up. Inside the terminal, chaos erupted instantly. It started with a flicker. The giant LCD screens displaying flight times at every gate in Terminal 5 blinked once, twice, and then went black. A collective gasp went through the thousands of waiting passengers. Then, the screens rebooted. But instead of flight times, every single screen displayed a bright red error message. System integrity. Error, license revoked. Admin, auth required. At gate A14, where Flight 409 was parked, the automatic doors to the jet bridge slammed shut and locked. The card readers used by the agents beeped a long, high-pitched rejection tone. Gary, the gate agent, looked at his computer. "What the? My screen is frozen. I can't print boarding passes. I can't move the jet bridge." Preston Halloway stopped pacing. "Why did the lights go out?" Jordan pocketed her phone. She turned to look at the group. "Looks like we have a technical difficulty." Captain Anderson stepped out of the plane. He looked at the locked jet bridge door, then at the frozen computer terminal. He looked at Jordan. He realized immediately what she had done. "Ms. Maxwell," Anderson said, stepping toward her with his hands up in a gesture of surrender. "You shut down the terminal?" "I revoked the license for the software due to a breach of contract," Jordan corrected him coolly. "The contract states that Apex Systems provides services to partners who uphold ethical standards of operation. I'd say racial profiling violates that clause. The system automatically locks down to protect the intellectual property." "You shut down the whole airport because you lost your seat," Preston shouted, stepping toward her. "You selfish bi—" Jordan spun on him. I shut it down because people like you think the world is built for you. It's not. It's built on systems I design, and you just got evicted from reality, Preston." Inside the terminal, the PA system crackled to life. But it wasn't an automated voice. It was the frantic voice of the airport operations director. "Attention all passengers. We are experiencing a critical failure of the scheduling matrix. All flights are grounded indefinitely. We ask that all passengers remain in the gate area. Please do not approach the desks." Gary's radio screamed. "Gary! Gary, are you there? This is Control. We're locked out. The system says the master key is physically located at gate A14. Do you have a tech there?" Gary looked at Jordan. His hands were shaking. I think the tech is the passenger we just kicked off." Brenda stood up, her mascara running down her face. "You did this? You're going to go to jail. You can't hijack an airport." "I didn't hijack anything," Jordan said, checking her nails. "I just turned off the lights in my own house. It's not my fault you're all renting space in it." Suddenly, the glass doors of the jet bridge entrance, the ones connecting to the main terminal, burst open. 3 police officers in tactical gear ran through, followed by a man in a high-end suit who looked like he was having a heart attack. It was Marcus Thorne, the director of Heathrow operations. Note: using Marcus as a secondary character, not the lead. "Who is she?" Marcus yelled at Gary. "Who has the codes?" Gary pointed a trembling finger at Jordan. Marcus ran up to her, sweating profusely. "Ma'am, you need to reverse this. We have 40 planes circling the airspace, running low on fuel. We can't assign them gates because the computer thinks the airport doesn't exist. This is a national security incident." Jordan looked at Marcus. Then she looked at Captain Anderson. "Captain," Jordan said softly, "is my seat available?" Anderson nodded immediately. "Seat 1A is yours, Ms. Maxwell. I'll carry your bag myself." Jordan turned back to Marcus. "I'm happy to reboot the system, Director. But I seem to be having trouble boarding my flight. Apparently I'm a security risk." Marcus turned to Preston and Brenda. "Who are these people?" "He's the passenger who took her seat," Anderson explained. "And she's the flight attendant who facilitated it." Marcus didn't hesitate. He turned to the police officers. "Get them out of here. I don't care where. Just get them off the secure side of the airport. Revoke their clearance. Arrest them for inciting a riot for all I care." "You can't arrest me," Preston shrieked as an officer grabbed his arm. "My father owns Halloway Holdings." "And this lady owns the sky," Marcus screamed back, losing all professional composure. "Get him out." As the police dragged a kicking and screaming Preston and a sobbing Brenda back into the terminal, Jordan looked at Marcus. "I'll need 10 minutes to re-authenticate the server," she said, "and I'd like a fresh glass of champagne when I get back on board." "Anything," Marcus breathed. "Just turn the airport back on." Jordan tapped her phone. "System rebooting in 3, 2, 1. Behind the glass walls of the terminal, a cheer went up from thousands of people as the screens flickered back to life. The lights hummed. The gate readers beeped, "Online." Jordan picked up her Loro Piana hoodie. She looked at Captain Anderson. "Shall we go to Los Angeles, Captain?" "After you, Ms. Maxwell," Anderson said, bowing his head slightly. But as Jordan stepped back onto the plane, reclaiming her throne in seat 1A, she knew the war wasn't over. Preston Halloway wasn't the type to go quietly, and Brenda would likely sue for wrongful termination. The flight to LA would be smooth. But what waited for them upon landing? That was where the real storm was brewing. The cabin of Flight 409 was quiet, but it was the silence of a bomb squad watching a timer count down. We were 30,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic. The service in first class was impeccable, bordering on terrified. The new flight attendant, A young man named Kevin, who had replaced Brenda, poured Jordan's vintage Krug champagne with a trembling hand. He placed a warm bowl of mixed nuts on her linen tablecloth as if he were offering an oblation to a vengeful god. Jordan didn't drink the champagne. She had her laptop open. The warm glow of the screen illuminated her face in the darkened cabin. She wasn't watching a movie. She was watching the world burn. Thanks to the high-speed satellite Wi-Fi, which, ironically, ran on an Apex Systems sub-protocol, she was monitoring the situation on the ground in real time. The video recorded by the passenger in seat 3A had been uploaded before the plane even pushed back. It was titled, "Entitled Brat and Racist Flight Attendant versus the Woman Who Owns the Internet." It already had 12 million views. Jordan scrolled through the comments. The internet had done its thing. Within an hour, they had identified Preston Holloway. They had identified Brenda. They had found Preston's Instagram, which was full of photos of him posing with tigers in Dubai and driving Ferraris he didn't own. But then, the narrative began to shift. Jordan saw a breaking news alert from CNBC. Breaking. Holloway Holdings chairman, Richard Holloway, accuses Apex Systems CEO of cyber terrorism following Heathrow shutdown. Jordan stiffened. She clicked the link. A video played of an older man, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, standing on the steps of a Manhattan courthouse. This was Richard Holloway, Preston's father, a corporate shark known for swallowing smaller companies and spitting out the bones. What happened today at Heathrow was not a customer service dispute, Richard Holloway said to the cameras, his voice smooth and dangerous. It was a hostage situation. Jordan Maxwell used her company's software to hold an international airport for ransom because she was asked to change seats. This is a woman who is unstable. We are filing an emergency motion to freeze Apex Systems government contracts immediately. She is a threat to national security. Jordan closed the window. She exhaled slowly. Bad news? She looked up. Captain Anderson was standing there. He had put the plane on autopilot and come back to check on her. He looked tired. Richard Holloway is spinning this, Jordan said quietly. He's trying to frame the software license revocation as a cyber attack. He wants to destroy my company before we land to protect his son's reputation. Anderson sat on the ottoman opposite her. I wrote my report already, Ms. Maxwell. I stated clearly that the ground staff violated federal aviation regulations regarding passenger manifesting. You didn't hack anything. You just stopped providing a service you weren't being respected for. Truth doesn't matter in the first 24 hours of a crisis, Captain, Jordan said, typing furiously. Narrative does, and Richard Holloway has a bigger microphone than I do right now. So, what do you do? Anderson asked. Jordan stopped typing. She looked at the captain. A small, cold smile touched her lips. I do what I do best, Captain. I analyze the data. She turned her laptop screen so he could see. It was a complex web of financial transactions, shell companies, and server logs. Holloway Holdings is a real estate conglomerate, Jordan explained, but they have a logistics division. That division ships cargo on this airline, which means their shipping manifests run through my servers. And, Jordan whispered. While Richard Holloway is busy going on TV calling me a terrorist, he forgot that his company's entire digital footprint is hosted on the Apex cloud. I'm currently conducting let's call it a randomized deep dive security audit of his account. Anderson raised an eyebrow. Is that legal? It is when the user agreement, which Preston unknowingly violated by trying to commandeer a flight booked under the corporate account, allows for forensic investigation of suspicious activity. Jordan tapped a key. I'm not hacking him, Captain. I'm just reading the mail he sent through my post office." Suddenly, a red box flashed on the screen. Match found. Jordan's eyes widened. She clicked the file. It was a shipping manifest from 3 months ago. Cargo. Machinery parts. Origin, Venezuela. Destination, Miami. But the metadata didn't match. The weight was off. The customs declaration was forged digitally, a forgery that was only visible if you had root access to the Apex code. "Oh, Richard," Jordan murmured. "You shouldn't throw stones when your glass house is full of contraband." "What is it?" Anderson asked, leaning in. "It's not machinery parts," Jordan said, her voice turning hard. "Holloway Holdings has been using the airline's cargo system to smuggle uncertified rare earth metals into the US to bypass tariffs. Millions of dollars of illegal imports. And they've been doing it on your planes, Captain." Anderson's face went pale. That's a federal crime. That implicates the airline if we don't catch it." "Exactly," Jordan said. "Richard tries to frame me for terrorism. I'm about to hand the FBI proof that he's running a smuggling ring." She looked at the flight map. 3 hours to Los Angeles. "Captain," Jordan said, "do we have a satellite phone link to the Department of Justice?" "We do," Anderson said. "Get me the line," Jordan said, closing her laptop, "and tell the crew to prepare for a very interesting arrival. I have a feeling Richard Holloway will be meeting us at the gate." The descent into Los Angeles was smooth, the city sprawling out like a grid of diamonds against the twilight. But inside Flight 409, the tension was palpable. Captain Anderson had radioed ahead. He hadn't told ground control everything, just that there was a high-priority security situation regarding the passengers and cargo. As the massive Boeing 777 taxied off the runway, Jordan looked out the window. Usually, a plane taxis to the terminal. This time, they were directed to a remote hard stand, a patch of concrete far away from the public gates. Waiting for them wasn't a jet bridge. It was a fleet of black SUVs, several police cruisers with lights flashing, and a black limousine. "Looks like the reception committee is here," Jordan said, adjusting her blazer. She had changed out of her hoodie. She was now wearing her full war paint. The sharp blazer, the sunglasses, the look of a woman who owns the room. The stairs were rolled up to the plane door. Captain Anderson opened it. The first person to step out of the black limousine on the tarmac was Richard Holloway. He looked even more imposing in person than on TV. He was flanked by 3 men in expensive suits, lawyers, and 2 private security guards. Behind them, standing by the police cars, were officers. But they looked confused, waiting for orders. Richard Holloway shouted up the stairs, his voice carrying over the whine of the engines. "I want that woman arrested immediately. She hijacked a plane. She compromised national infrastructure." Captain Anderson stood at the top of the stairs. "Mr. Holloway, you are not authorized to be on the tarmac." "I own half the board of directors of this airline," Richard roared. "Bring her down." Jordan stepped out from behind the captain. She stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at the angry men. The wind whipped her hair, but she stood like a statue. She began to descend the stairs, slowly, deliberately. Each click of her heel on the metal steps was a drumbeat. When she reached the bottom, Richard Holloway stepped into her space, his face red with rage. "You," he spat. "You think you can embarrass my son? You think you can shut down an airport and get away with it? I have already filed a lawsuit that will bankrupt you. I have the district attorney on speed dial. You are going to prison, Miss Maxwell." Jordan took off her sunglasses. She looked him in the eye. "Mr. Holloway, where is Preston?" "He's in a private jet on his way here," Richard sneered. "And when he arrives, he will be sitting in first class, where he belongs. Unlike you." Jordan smiled. It was a terrifying smile. She reached into a bag and pulled out a single thin file folder. "I watched your interview, Richard," she said softly. "You called me a cyber-terrorist. You said I compromised the system." "And I stand by it," Richard shouted for the benefit of the police officers nearby. "Officers, arrest this woman." The police started to move forward. "Wait," Jordan said. She didn't shout, she just projected her voice. "Officer, before you put cuffs on me, you might want to look at this." She handed the folder not to Richard, but to the lead FBI agent who had just stepped out of an unmarked SUV. The agent, a tall woman named Agent Miller, took the folder. "What is this?" Agent Miller asked. "That," Jordan said, pointing at Richard, "is the digital paper trail proving that Holloway Holdings has been smuggling illegal rare earth minerals from Venezuela using this airline's cargo hold for the last 18 months. They falsified customs data. They forged the digital signatures. And unfortunately for Richard, they did it on my software." Richard Holloway froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. "That's a lie," Richard stammered. She fabricated it." "The metadata is immutable, Richard," Jordan said, her voice like steel. "Blockchains don't lie. People do. I sent a copy to the DOJ 3 hours ago from the air. They cross-referenced it with the physical cargo in the belly of this plane right now. Go ahead, Agent Miller. Open the cargo hatch." Agent Miller gestured to her team. 2 agents ran to the cargo hold of the 767. They cracked it open. They pulled out a crate marked "machine parts." They pried the lid off. Inside, there were no machine parts. There were raw, unrefined ingots of rare earth metals wrapped in plastic. The silence on the tarmac was deafening. Richard Holloway began to back away. I didn't know. It must be a rogue employee. Preston. Maybe Preston did it." "Don't blame the son you tried so hard to protect," Jordan said, stepping closer to him. "You signed the manifests, Richard. Your digital key. Your biometric approval. I saw it all." Agent Miller turned to Richard Holloway. "Mr. Holloway, please place your hands behind your back." "You can't do this," Richard screamed as the agents grabbed him. "Do you know who I am?" "We know exactly who you are," Jordan said calmly. "You're the man who thought he could bully a black woman out of her seat because you forgot that she built the chair you were sitting on." As they cuffed Richard Holloway, his phone buzzed on the tarmac where he had dropped it. It was a text from Preston. "Dad, I landed. Why are all my credit cards declined?" Jordan looked down at the phone, then up at Richard, who was being shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The very cruiser he thought was there for her. "Karma," Jordan whispered, "is the only flight that is never delayed." She turned to Captain Anderson, who was watching from the bottom of the stairs with a look of pure awe. "Captain," Jordan said, "I believe I have a connecting flight to catch, but I think I'll take a private car this time." "Ms. Maxwell," Anderson said, shaking her hand, "it was an honor flying with you." Jordan walked toward the terminal, the flashing lights of the police cars reflecting off her sunglasses. She didn't look back at the chaos she had orchestrated. She didn't look back at the ruined empire of Holloway Holdings. She just took out her phone and sent one final text to her team at Apex Systems. "Re-enable the Holloway account, but charge them triple for the data storage. We have legal fees to cover." The weeks following the incident at Heathrow and the arrest at LAX were not quiet. They were a deafening roar of public discourse, legal battles, and corporate restructuring. The world had watched a simple seat dispute spiral into the collapse of a dynasty, and everyone wanted to know the details. The video of Preston Holloway screaming at the flight crew had become the most watched clip of the year. But it was the image of his father, Richard Holloway, being led away in handcuffs on the tarmac, that truly captivated the public. It was a visual representation of a shifting tide, a moment where money could no longer buy immunity. The fall of the House of Holloway. The collapse of Holloway Holdings was swift and brutal. With Richard facing federal indictment for smuggling and customs fraud, the company's stock plummeted by 73% in 3 days. Investors fled. The board of directors, desperate to save the remaining assets, voted unanimously to oust the Holloway family from all executive positions. Preston Holloway, the man who started it all because he wanted extra legroom, found himself in a reality he wasn't built for. His credit cards were frozen. His father's assets were seized by the DOJ, pending the investigation. The platinum key status he cherished so much was revoked for life by the airline alliance. 2 months later, a paparazzo caught a photo of Preston in downtown Miami. He wasn't driving a Ferrari. He was trying to sell his collection of luxury watches at a pawn shop, looking disheveled and angry. The caption on the viral post read simply, "Economy class looks good on you." The fate of Brenda, the flight attendant who had made the fatal error of judging a passenger by her hoodie, faced her own reckoning. The airline conducted an internal review, which was leaked to the press. It revealed a pattern of bias in her treatment of passengers over a 10-year career. She was terminated for cause, stripping her of her pension and benefits. But the karma hit harder than just job loss. Because her name and face were associated with the viral incident, she found herself unhireable in the customer service industry. The last anyone heard, she had moved back to her hometown, living quietly, far away from the power she used to wield in the aisles of first class. The rise of Apex. For Jordan Maxwell, the incident wasn't a scandal. It was a demonstration of power. Apex Systems didn't lose contracts, they gained them. Governments and major corporations saw what happened when Jordan's software was disrespected. They realized that Apex wasn't just a vendor. They were the backbone of modern infrastructure. The company's valuation soared. Jordan sat in her office in Silicon Valley, looking out over the campus. Her assistant walked in. "Ms. Maxwell, the airline CEO is on line 1. He wants to know if you'll accept his invitation to the board of directors. He says they need someone with your clarity of vision to prevent future mistakes." Jordan smiled. She picked up her pen, a simple, cheap ballpoint she liked because it wrote smoothly. "Tell him I accept," Jordan said. "On one condition." "What's that, Ma'am?" "We rewrite the employee training manual. Personally. And I want the first chapter to be titled, 'Respect is the only currency that matters.'" The final flight. 6 months later, Jordan was flying again. She was back on Flight 409 to London. She walked onto the plane, wearing the same Loro Piana hoodie. The new chief purser greeted her at the door. "Welcome back, Miss Maxwell. Seat 1A is ready for you." Jordan walked to her seat. She sat down. She looked out the window at the rain. She thought about Preston. She thought about Richard. She thought about how easy it would have been to move to economy that day, to keep her head down, to let them win. But she hadn't. She took a sip of water and closed her eyes, finally finding the peace she had been looking for. The engines roared to life, a sound of immense power under perfect control. Karma hadn't just hit back, it had cleared the runway. And that is the story of how one woman turned a moment of disrespect into a revolution. It's a brutal reminder that you never truly know who you are dealing with. Preston Holloway and Brenda thought they were kicking a nobody out of a seat. They didn't realize they were unplugging the world. In the end, this isn't just about a plane ticket. It's about dignity. It's about standing your ground when the world tries to push you down. Jordan Maxwell showed us that true power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one who holds the keys. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice and hard-hitting karma, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that karma is always watching. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. I'll see you in the next video. Stay humble, or life will humble you for you.